Yesterday, I talked about the two mental qualities required to observe the presently arising object systematically, properly. They are accurate aiming and effort, ardent effort. I also gave examples to apply into the practice, how to apply these two mental factors into the practice. Meanwhile, I talk the immediate benefits that can be enjoyed having accurate aiming, which is vitakka in Pali, and effort, viriya in Pali. And I said, when yogis have accurate aiming, when mind is well directed towards the meditative object, mind is free from three kinds of wrongful thoughts: sensuous thought, ill will, aversion, and harmful thoughts. And in addition, when yogis have accurate aiming, your mind is free from sloth and torpor. And on the account of effort, I say that when you have effort, your mind is free from laziness, sluggishness, mind is not reluctant, and your mind is well prevented from unwholesomenesses which hasn't arisen yet, and it dispels as well, energy dispels unwholesomenesses which have already arisen, and it gives rise to wholesomenesses which haven't arisen, and it sustains, develops, and fulfills the wholesomenesses which have already arisen. In addition to these, when you have accurate aiming, especially while observing the primary object, main object, it will be easier for you detect, to detect the thinking and thought, the wandering mind. When accurate aiming is there, I repeat, when accurate aiming is there, then it becomes easier to detect the thinking and thoughts quickly. You delay to detect thinking and thoughts or wandering mind is because your aiming is yet to be accurate. So this is another benefit you can enjoy when you have accurate aiming. On account of effort, when you have sufficient effort, you will not delay to catch the presently arising object. Your awareness will be timely. Your awareness will be timely. You will not delay to catch the presently arising object. Physicalities, mentalities, they arise and pass away quickly, swiftly, in superfast manner. If you don't apply sufficient energy, you will not get in time. You will delay. You will not be able to absorb the entire process. You will not be able to absorb the entire process. You will not be able to catch the object on time. So to catch the object on right time, to not to delay, again, effort is needed. You have to rush towards the object without giving any rooms for analyzation, giving rooms for thinking. If you keep analyzing, if you keep thinking, you will not be able to rush towards the object. So to rush, to go quickly and to catch the object on the right time, again, you need effort. In addition to penetrate into the object, not just getting on time to the object, but to penetrate into the object. Because the true mindfulness, the true awareness is like an anchor stone placed into the water, which is firm, like stable, and well like penetrated, well grounded to the bottom of the water, which does not like a drift or which does not bounces. If you don't have sufficient energy, your mindfulness will be like a dry, hollow pumpkin placed on the surface of water, which is bobbing up and down. So the true mindfulness is not like that. It points, this simile points to the mindfulness which is not stable, which is not focused. That kind of mindfulness is not good. That kind of mindfulness is not good. You have to have a strong mindfulness that penetrates into the meditative object. So to penetrate into the meditative object, again, you need effort. For example, if you just place a stone on the surface of water, it slowly sinks into it. But when you throw forcefully, it sinks fastly. It sinks fastly. Similarly, if you apply sufficient energy, then mind sinks into the meditative object fastly, unless it sinks slowly. In that sense, also you have to apply sufficient energy, and if you apply sufficient energy, your mind sinks into the meditative object. Whether you observe rising, falling, your mind will sink into rising, falling. Your mind will plunge into rising, falling. If you observe mental objects, your mind will plunge into mental objects. If you observe sensations, mind will plunge into sensations. If you observe the movements of foot, your mind will plunge into those objects. If you observe day-to-day activities, then to day-to-day activities. So to plunge into the object, again you need sufficient energy effort. With application of these two mental factors, as you keep observing the presently arising object repeatedly over and over again and again, your perception become firm and steadfast, because by application of these two mental qualities, you keep recording rising as rising, falling as falling, rising as rising, falling as falling, thinking as thinking, planning as planning, pain as pain, seeing as seeing, hearing as hearing, right step as right, left step as left, then lifting as lifting, dropping as dropping, and so on. From early morning until you go to the bed, you keep recording. You keep recording. And that recording become firm and steadfast. So perception, we call perception, which records these objects. In fact, perception in Pali Sanya has two functions: recognizing and recording. It records, recording and recognizing. It recognizes the objects and it records. As you keep recording again and again, over and over, this perception becomes firm and steadfast, and that is the proximate cause to generate, to arise the mindfulness. So this is mentioned in the text. The firm and steadfast mindfulness is the nearest cause, okay? Nearest cause to develop mindfulness. That is why, without discrimination, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, wholesome or unwholesome, yogis should keep recording presently arising object. That is yogi's duty. Yogis should not discriminate. Discriminating is not yogi's duty. Good or bad, have to observe. Pleasant or unpleasant, have to observe. Wholesome or unwholesome mind, have to observe. Just observing as they are. As they are, yogis have to observe. In this way, if you keep observing, then the perception becomes form steadfast, like a recorder does. Recorder, whether it is voice recorder or video recorder, it just records. Video recorder records video, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. Audio recorder records, good or bad, whatever. It just records. Similarly, yogis have should just record the presently arising object. And with application of accurate aiming and sufficient energy, your recording becomes steadfast and firm. Then the mindfulness develops. This is how these two mental qualities, aiming mental quality, vitaka, and effort, sufficient effort, viriya, permits to arise the mindfulness sati. So the second controlling faculties develops. We had faith and confidence. With faith and confidence, we came to the center to practice meditation. Then we start our meditation. We applied energy, and with the application of energy, mindfulness develops. So second, the third, let's say if we count faith and confidence, then the third, the controlling faculties develops in this way. And as the third mental quality or mental faculty develops, yogis start to feel the mind being face to face with presently arising object. When mindfulness is present, object, meditative object, and the observing mind become face to face. Now mind hardly misses the presently arising objects. It keeps in view. It keeps in view the presently arising object. Like a footballer keeps in view the football. Like a badminton player keeps in view the shuttlecock. A boxer keeps view the movements of the opponent. So similarly, mindfulness keeps in view the presently arising object. And this is how yogis come to discern or explore the individual characteristics. Because now mind is well sticked to the presently arising objects. Mindfulness does not let your mind to wobble over the presently arising object because it has the nature of non-wobbling. Mindfulness has nature of non-wobbling, non-superficiality. It sinks into the meditative object. It penetrates into the meditative object. And as mind penetrates into the meditative object, definitely yogis explore the individual natures of the presently arising object. So if you observe rising and falling, then you explore or you discern the different individual natures as hardness, as softness, uh, warmness, coolness, tension, tightness, stiffness, heaviness, lightness, vibration, tingling sensation, throbbing sensation, uh, in this way, many sensations are there. The better mindfulness, the more enormous you come to explore these sensations. At the beginning of the practice, you may detect one and one rising, you may detect one and one falling, but later the numbers of the sensations, number of the individual natures that you detect become more, becomes more and more. In single rising, you will detect more than one, more than two, more than three, like that. In single rising, you may detect hardness or softness, coolness, warmness, like that. Or yogis at least will detect the changes of the sensation from the when you observe from the beginning to the end, you see the changes, like rising stars with hardness. But as it expands and expands, so maybe the hardness growing up, it is getting stronger, or maybe it is decreasing. At the end, maybe it disappears, or it decreases, or it increased. You will see in that way. Similarly, in the falling, and in next rising, in next falling, in each rising, falling, yogis will explore the individual sensations. So just imagine if you explore the individual sensations, natures, characteristics in each rising and falling, then within in single sitting section, you will have many experience to share with your teacher. Yeah, within a single sitting, you will have many experiences to share with teacher, because we observe many times within a sitting section. We observe many times rising, falling, falling. So what about 6 sections of the, so many to share with teacher. That is how you have to observe, beginning, starting from rising and falling. And that is how you have to report, because your primary object is rising and falling. When you report to your teacher, you have to begin with rising and falling. Rising and falling is your primary object. With primary object, you have to start your report. What did you realize in rising? What did you realize in falling? If you saw the harness, then you should say, I saw harness in rising. If you saw softness in falling, you should say, I saw softness in falling. Then what about next rising, next falling? You have to make sure you observe continuously, one rising after another. You close your eyes, instantly you observe rising, falling, first rising and falling. Then second rising and falling. Then third rising and falling. Then fourth, fifth. In this way, yogis should try to observe. Then it will be easier to explore the individual natures as well. If you don't observe continuously, it's hard to explore the sensation, and it's again hard to see the changes of the sensations. You will not explore the different types of sensations. You will not see the changes of the sensation. Rising, having one sensation, falling, having another sensation, then immediately another rising, falling, having different sensation. If you miss second, then you will not see anything. If you miss third, if you miss fourth, you will not see. But if you observe continuously, you will see each rising and falling, having different sensations. So if you can mention in that way, it would be much better. If you can share your experience with your teacher in that way, in detail, it would be much better. And like a force rising and falling, I saw what sensation, then immediately we can't report, of course we can't report all of them, but as possible as we can, we try our best to report in detail. And another thing, you can accumulate all the uh, sensation or the individual natures or the experiences that you had in rising and falling. You don't just need to talk about a single sitting. You can add from another sections. On some section, I felt rising like that, like this. You can add. In some section, I feel warmness in rising. I feel warmness in rising. In some section, I feel heaviness in rising. Some section, I feel vibration in rising, in falling, like that. You can add like that. So first to talk about the rising and falling. Whatever you experience, try to share with your teacher. Then secondary object. Then about thinking and thoughts. Then about the sensation you had during sitting. Then if you talk about the walking, then primary object is movement of foot. Movement of foot. So you talk the experiences you had on movement of foot. Same individual characteristics. What did you feel when you lift? What did you feel when you drop? What did you feel in lifting, moving, dropping? Again, if you observe continuously, you will explore different sensations, different nature in each lifting, moving, dropping. You will explore being different. The right leg having different sensation, left leg having different sensation, each step having different sensation. You will detect in that way. So observe continuously. Here I would like to talk about the observing the primary object. Your primary object is rising and falling. You have to stay with primary object, like spiders. Spiders, the position at the center of the cobweb. Whenever the insect gets caught on the cobweb, then they swiftly move to that place and they deal with it, then immediately return to the center of the cobweb. That is what yogis should do. If nothing to observe, yogis should be the center, that is the rising and falling primary object. You have to keep observing rising and falling continuously. If thinking and thoughts, mental objects arise, then swiftly you have to deal with them by noting. Then swiftly coming back to abdomen. If sensations become predominant in other parts of the body, then observe swiftly. When you finish to deal with it, then return back to abdomen. This is the example to observe the rising and falling. We can have another example, that is, you might have seen the boomerang. A boomerang is a thrown tool, typically constructed with airfoil sections and designed to spin about an axis perpendicular to the direction of its flight and designed to return to the thrower. It returns to thrower. So similarly, like you keep observing the rising and falling, and when secondary objects arise, you observe swiftly and have to observe rising and falling, have to come back to rising and falling swiftly again, like throwing the boomerang. Boomerang returns to the thrower. Or the simplest, the example is rising and falling is like your home. You stay at your home when nowhere to go. You stay at your home. And when you have somewhere to go, you deal with tasks to be done, then you return to your home. At times, when you have go to office, you go to office, then you return to your home. When you have to go for work, then you go for work, then you return your home. At times you go market, you go shopping, you travel, you visit your friends, your relatives. When you are done, you return to home. So you return home. So in this way, if nowhere to go, you stay at home. So the home object, the primary object, if rising and falling is your primary object, is your home. If in-breath and out-breath is your primary object, then it's your home. If no other objects to be observed, you have to stay at home. Only when you have other secondary objects, predominant secondary objects, then you observe. And here I would like to emphasize, like only when the secondary objects become predominant. Sometimes they are not predominant. You feel like they are at background. When you, for example, when you keep observing rising and falling, you might feel something running in your mind at background. If it is, you feel like at background, then you don't need to label. Let be, let the mind know, keep observing rising and falling. Like while the spider keep position at the center of the cobweb, they also detect different kind of vibration or the sound which are not from the cobweb. They only move to the another place of the cobweb when the insects get caught and the vibration arise. They don't keep always moving to the another place, another location of the cobweb. So similarly, yogis only observe the secondary object when they really become predominant and obvious. Otherwise, keep observing the rising and falling the primary object. Let's say, keep observing the primary object. This is how we observe primary object and secondary object with application of the accurate aiming and sufficient energy. As you observe repeatedly primary object as well as secondary object, the recording become firm and steadfast. Then mindfulness develops. Then when mindfulness develops, it's become easier to explore the individual characteristics. And then as you continue, later you will see the conditional characteristics. Yogis will see the changes of those individual characteristics, increasing, decreasing, dissolving. Means like harness arise, it stays for a while or it changes, then later it disappears. Softness arises, it stays for a while, then disappears, or it changes. First, yogis come to see the changes, increasing of the sensation, decreasing, shifting, moving, and so on. So whenever you see the sensation, then you have to make sure to know in detail about that sensation, whether it is in abdomen, whether it is any other place of your body, or whether you observe the mental object. You have to you have to make sure that you know in detail about those objects. Not only in sitting and walking, when you see heaviness, lightness, make sure you know in detail. Make sure you pay good attention to know in detail what happened to that heaviness, what happened to that lightness. If warmness, coolness, then what happened to that warmness, coolness? Because that curiosity will lead you to know the second type of characteristics, that is conditional characteristics. Appearance of the individual nature, then continuation for a while, then dissolving and disappearing. So to know to see the second characteristics, yogis have to be very careful, very curious about that individual natures which become obvious at present moment. And then as you continue, automatically you will explore only the appearance and the disappearance, then just the disappearance of those individual natures. Okay, individual, just dissolving, disappearing of the individual natures. So this is how we get to that stage, seeing just the dissolving of presently arising object. The presently arising object, they are physicality and mentality. So this is the first causative factor to sharpen the controlling faculties. This is the first causative factor. Of course, later we will talk about this, the causative factor. But I think right now this is enough to talk about the first one. Now we will move to the second causative factor to sharpen our controlling faculties. The second one, Pali says that Tattha Sakkatsa Kiriyaya Sampadeti. That is the Pali. I repeat, Tattha Sakkatsa Kiriyaya Sampadeti. That means to see just the dissolving of the presently arising object. Meditators practice respectfully in reverential manner. This is the second causative factor or second cause to sharpen the controlling faculties. That means practicing respectfully, practicing with cure and respect is the second cause to sharpen the controlling faculties. So yogis have to practice respectfully. How to practice respectfully? First, as I have just mentioned, when you observe the presently arising object, you should not be sluggish, you should not be reluctant, you should be very respectful to the presently arising object. Respectful in the sense of applying sufficient energy and accurate aiming. Your mind, you should not let the mind to fall superficially. You should try your best to penetrate into that meditative object. That is how you show the respect to practice and show respect to the presently arising object. If you don't show that respect, then your mind will not penetrate into the presently arising object. Hence, mindfulness will not be there, concentration will not be there, wisdom will not be there. Then, of course, because you don't have such a strong faith and confidence that awes you, that inspire you to apply sufficient energy, effort, and accurate aiming. If you have such a great or strong faith and confidence, definitely you do apply sufficient energy and accurate aiming. So you lack. That's why the first thing you should do in order to practice reverential manner is whatever object you observe, make sure you apply sufficient energy and accurate aiming. Yes, still we miss, but we try to revive. We try to fulfill the gaps. We try to fulfill the intervals. When we miss, when we find out the gaps or the intervals, especially in day-to-day activities, we keep missing, we forget, gaps are still there, intervals are still there, objects that we miss are still there. So when we realize, we try to fill that gap. Oh, I missed that action, or I forgot that object to observe. Next time, I will try my best to not to forget and not to miss. That kind of inspiration is needed. If you keep inspiring yourself and if you keep trying you will be able to do the day-to-day activities without missing a single object, without missing a single action. So that is also about showing the respect to your day-to-day activities. But here, under this topic, under this statement of practicing respectfully, text mention the four points. The first one is, I would like to recite the Pali, Chakku Masayatha Andho. That means to act as if blind, although you have eyes to see. And this is the first point mentioned under this statement, under this second factor. Yogis have to behave like blind, although yogis have eyes to see. So that means uh, you have to restrain your eyes. What is the behavior of what is the behavior of a blind person? A blind person does not take any interest about the sights, about the visible objects. He or she does not have interest about the sights, about the visible objects at all. So that kind of behavior need to be shown by the meditators. Meditators should not take interest looking around, looking here and there, gazing. That is not the way of practicing respectfully. That is why from the very first day of the retreat, we ask yogis to restrain eyes. Yogis, don't look here and there, always cast your eyes down. Whether you go to dining hall, whether you come to meditation hall, whether you go to your room, wherever you go, wherever you stay, keep your eyes restrained. Because of this statement mentioned in the text, because that shows the respect to the practice. Practicing in a reverential manner or behaving like a blind person. It is because when you look here and there, when you see pleasing object, greed tends to arise. Greed is likely to arise. When you see unpleasing, then anger tends to arise. Anger tends to arise. We are here to purify our mind. Yogis are practicing meditation for purification of the mind. You try your best to prevent to not to arise the unwholesomenesses, defilements, to not to enter in your mind stream, to not to give rooms for unwholesomenesses or the defilements. So you can't easily permit the unwholesomenesses to arise through the eye door. When you look, eye or eye base is the sense door from where the defilements enters into the mind stream. When you see pleasant object, greed enters. When you see unpleasant objects, then anger enters. So you should not let to enter these defilements easily to your mind stream. That is why you have to behave like a blind person. That is, you don't need to close. Closing the eyes is not the way that we practice in day-to-day activities, even not in walking. We keep our eyes open. We keep slightly down. We don't look too far. We don't look too close. Right ahead, we within 3 to 6 feet, we cast down our eyes. That is the way to keep our eyes. That is the way to restrain your eyes. Still, there might be moments when you see, although you don't have intention to look, intention to see something. So what to do at that time? At that time we note as seeing. There are the moments when we have to look something. We have to do deliberately. Yeah, at that time we look and we note as looking, seeing. Like in buffet, we must look look at the foods. We look at that time we note as looking, seeing. Before eating, we look at our dish. At that time also we note looking, seeing. After sitting meditation, when you open your eyes, you look, you see, you note, looking, seeing. In those moments when you have to look and you see something, you note immediately at the present moment as looking, seeing. Beside those moments, you have to restrain your eyes. So that's why yogis should not keep looking here and there, always have to restrain the eyes. Keep your eyes always casting down. Keep casting down. So this is the first point. Yeah, first point. Yet to talk more 3 points under practicing reverential manner. We will continue tomorrow. So for today, the yogis have to practice in reverential manner, and to practice reverential manner, uh, you have to apply sufficient energy. You have to apply accurate aiming to observe the presently arising object. If you apply these two mental qualities, you will not delay to catch the object. You will be on the right time. You will be able to penetrate into the object. These two mental factors will permit to arise the mindfulness, and hence you will know clearly about the presently arising object. Especially you will explore the individual natures, which is the very first step in order to get the stage that you will see the uh, just disappearance of the presently arising object. So you'll be all able to practice respectfully and able to develop mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom.